Calgary Elbow.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I will propose an amendment to Bill 30.
It's known as Amendment A5.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. My amendment is as follows. I'm moving this on behalf of my colleague, the member for Calgary McKay-Nose Hill. Move that Bill 30, an act to protect the health and well-being of working Albertans, be amended in Schedule 2, Section 9, in the proposed Section 9.2, by adding the following after subsection 4. 5. The Board shall measure and evaluate the effectiveness of the Code of Conduct annually in informing all workers and employers of their rights in their interactions with the Board, and take steps as the Board considers appropriate to improve awareness of those rights, including developing strategies for overcoming language, information, and physical or mental capacity barriers. So, again, Madam Chair, the objective of this amendment, which we had shared with government, is truly, and I hope taken in good faith, and a true desire to make the bill better, to improve the bill. I would hope that members of both the government side as well as the opposition would see the merit in supporting this amendment. As a principle, Bill 30 proposes to add or expand the scope of work for several groups and initiatives that will advance worker safety and rights. That includes the Appeals Commission, the Fair Practices Office, the Code of Rights and Conduct, and the Workers' Compensation Board itself. There are tens of thousands of Albertans who stand to benefit each year from those, including Albertans who will take the time to learn about their rights and protections, Albertans whose employers or representatives do take the time to do outreach, and Albertans who are fortunate enough to work with well-informed peers. But unfortunately, not everybody in this province has the privilege of working in such environments. And unfortunately, every year we see or hear stories of vulnerable Albertans or even just ordinary rank-and-file working Albertans who don't practically or in reality actually enjoy all the legislated rights that they should as workers. There is, unfortunately, abuse and bullying that goes on in some workplaces, and it is a significant minority of employers who allow such a thing to go on, and that's important to emphasize that really is the minority. But there are some who would take advantage of their employees, of workers' lack of knowledge about their rights. They take advantage of the workers' lack of capacity with the English language, or the capacity to learn about their rights, and employers who would threaten to fire, in some cases even deport employees who would seek to assert their legislated rights. One of the things that this bill has is various coming into 4 states, and that presumably is to allow for time for education of workers as well as employers about the new provisions in here. Now, the other thing I want to emphasize is that how important it is in all aspects of what government does that we measure what we do. This amendment seeks to have the government measure and evaluate the effectiveness of the Code of Conduct annually in their success in informing workers and employers of their rights in the interactions with the Board. And that also would compel them to take steps the Board considers appropriate to improve the awareness of those rights, including developing strategies for overcoming the barriers that we've talked about: language, information, physical or mental capacity barriers. So I'm sure that the Workers' Compensation Board, that the various different commission, the Appeals Commission, the Fair Practices Office, the Code of Rights and Conduct, and the WCB itself, I'm sure that they will do that work. I have no doubt they will. That is their core mandate, and I'm certain it will happen. Having said that, how do we know is an important question that we in this Assembly, as the governors ultimately of organizations like WCB, should be asking ourselves. So this, to me, Madam Chair, is a common sense amendment that I would hope the government would support. It takes into account the most vulnerable employees in this province, or those in the most precarious position. the amendment makes it very clear that thousands of people who don't necessarily have time to pore over the 100 and some odd pages of this substantial bill, or the 100-plus pages of the Workers' Compensation Act to really understand their rights. Now, I recognize that there are poster campaigns and websites and other education programs, but this amendment is what I believe a practical action that will make the bill better to work for Alberta's most vulnerable and workers that are often the most at risk. And I would certainly ask that all members of this Assembly would vote in favour of what I hope is a thoughtful amendment to make this bill genuinely better. Thank you, Madam Chair.